Another 7 popular opinions that are actually terrible. Number 7. CR7 to Arsenal would have won them the league. So this is something that initially began years ago, around the time when Ronaldo left United actually, but expectedly died down after Ronaldo moved to Saudi. Until recently that is, cause as we move closer to another and possibly the biggest potential Arsenal bottle job, a certain someone has opened his mouth again. Like he ever closed it in the first place. So to state the obvious, Piers Morgan loves himself a bit of the old Ronnie Rub, and that is a made up term by the way. CR7 isn't suddenly endorsing Vicks, and though he's mostly just doing it to make you mad while you idiots actually believe he's somehow oblivious to his impartiality, the more recent predictably unpopular points presented by the unapologetically passionate pigeon lady with the pudgy appearance of a panda, perspiring patterns of a pig, and painfully preposterous persistence of an epileptic parrot has garnered even more attention than usual. He said that Ronaldo to Arsenal in January would have resulted in the club winning the Premier League. And being the huge CR7 fanboy that I am, do I believe this? Well, to put it into words my average viewer would understand, not by the hair of my chinny chin. And here's why. Okay, let's clear something up. I'm not saying Ronaldo isn't capable of playing up front in this Arsenal team, okay? Of course he is. There's a reason why Pep wanted him. And yes, Pep did want him, you failed abortion. And also, let's not get it twisted, if Ronaldo was a part of the setup of a team who were on top going into the run-in, ain't no way he was ever letting them bottle it. That's just not him. However, much like the predicament at United, this isn't the case of could he have done it, it was more of whether he was willing to. And considering how he felt he was treated at the time, the only way he was going to be happy is if the entire team was built around him. And relating this back to Arsenal, obviously Arteta would not have done this. And this would have inevitably resulted in friction between player and manager, with tension boiling over week by week, and eventually resulting in some sort of public fallout. I don't know, just a hunch I have. Number 6. The Man City-Liverpool rivalry. Right, look, respect to Jurgen Klopp, okay? In fact, if I was asked who I prefer personally between Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola, it would be Jurgen Klopp. If I was asked personally who I prefer between Man City and Liverpool, it would be Liverpool. But we still gotta be honest, folks. Cause as much as the smiling and sarcastic but sometimes seething son of Stuttgart with subtle signs of a psycho has an incredible head-to-head record against Pep, as far as the amount of silverware accumulated between them in the years they spent together in England, bro, it's not even close. So, Jurgen Klopp in his 9-year stint at Liverpool won 8 trophies. Pep Guardiola in that time won 19. Jurgen Klopp won 1 Premier League trophy. Guardiola in that time won 6. 1 Champions League each, so fair enough. Klopp won 2 EFL Cups. Guardiola in that time period won 4. That's not a rivalry, folks. That's domination. Number 5. MSN are the greatest trio of all time. So Messi, Suarez and Neymar played together for 3 seasons, and never mind since then, even during that time those guys were pretty regularly getting shouts of being the greatest attacking trio of all time. Now while their stats as a trio were admittedly out of this world, if you combine that with collective dominance and assess it as a whole, it really isn't as great as you think. Cause you see, in the 3 years MSN spent together, Barcelona even reached the semi-final of the Champions League, the biggest competition in the world, a grand total of 1 time, winning it in their first season together in 14-15, but then going on to eat just whole buckets of shit in the subsequent 2 years. And as far as their league form went, yes, they did win 2 out of 3, but they certainly weren't dominant, and in fact had limped to the title pretty much both times they'd won it. In contrast, what happened immediately after the trio was broken up? Barca were back to strolling to the league title once again, while getting humiliated in the last 8 of the UCL. Some things never change, I guess. Number 4. Steven Gerrard had terrible teammates at Liverpool. Like, stop me if you've heard at least one of these before. Steven Gerrard is the biggest legend in Liverpool history, but he didn't win the Premier League because he wasn't in great teams and had to carry Liverpool. Or, Steven Gerrard is the greatest midfielder in Premier League history, but he wasn't as successful as Keane, Vieira, Scholes, Lampard because he wasn't in great teams and, yes, had to carry Liverpool. Well, again, I'm not saying there isn't a hint of truth in both those statements, but man, does it far from tell the full story. Because you see, Liverpool from 1998 to 2004 were mainly a very solid and organised team and had one of the best players in the world in Michael Owen in their books, as well as a couple of others deemed as being one of the best in their positions during that time, like Robbie Fowler and Didi Hamann. And then after 2007, they probably had their best team during Gerrard's time there. You know, the one with the likes of Alonso, Hyypiä, Mascherano, Kuyt, Crouch, Babel, and once again, one of the best players in the world in Fernando Torres. He then spent large parts of the following 2 seasons out with a groin injury, can't carry them if you're not there, and by the time he was fully fit again, he had to change his game as he wasn't the player he once was. While Liverpool again signed another one of the world's best strikers who turned in 2 of the greatest individual seasons in Premier League history. So, yes, he was always one of the standout performers, but outside 1 or 2 seasons, he wasn't the only one. Number 3. The World Cup is the highest level in the game. To way to get in the spirit. Look, obviously no disrespect intended. The World Cup is still the greatest competition in football. But again, there is a difference between greatest competition and highest level. And this is where people get confused. People think the highest level is the World Cup. And honestly, it really isn't anymore. You see, during Maradona's time, the World Cup was no doubt the premier competition in football. The Champions League wasn't what it is now, and there were still many South American players still staying in their region of the world. So the only time people really got to see the best in the world all come together was the World Cup. However, ever since the changing of the format of the UCL in the early 90s and the subsequent revenue that has come along since then, all the best players in the world from all over the world now apply their trade in Europe and play in the Champions League. And given that the Champions League is club football, which is played at a much faster pace and intensity as a result of teams being more well drilled and teammates being more familiar with each other, by the time the new millennium rolled around, the Champions League no doubt became the #1 competition in the world. Number 2, Franck Ribéry was robbed off a Ballon d'Or in 2013. No prizes for guessing which fanbase pushed this horse shit. And you know what? I know I previously asked these man if they needed someone to oppose CR7 that season, why not Thomas Müller, the actual best player of that Bayern team? But today I offer a different suggestion. Why not Messi? I know he suffered from injuries, but he still banged that season, fam. 100 points, 60 goals and all sorts. But nope, gotta follow the media narrative and go with Ribéry. Even though if you look at the facts, Franck Ribéry in 12-13 underperformed in most of the big Champions League ties, including the first semi-final against Barca as well as the final against Dortmund, missed a couple of key games in Bayern's route to the domestic cup, and while he was brilliant in the Bundesliga, was he really more impressive than someone like Stefan Kiepling, who won the Golden Boot despite playing for a team who totaled over 30 goals less than Bayern Munich? Of course he wasn't. And since he wasn't, as I've said many times, when you have all those factors working against you, you can only combat it with insane statistics a la Messi 2012. And while 11 goals and 23 assists is admittedly really good and was probably the Messi 2012 equivalent of Franck Ribéry's career, in real time, Messi 2012, it sure was f***ing not. Do your research, kids. Number 1, Messi carried Barcelona in the 18-19 season. Or as some of you phrase it, Messi was a one-man team in the 18-19 season. Well, my friends, however you say it, it's still horseshit. I genuinely believe Barca's fortunes wouldn't have been all that different had Messi not featured that season. And instead, his form was driven by the team's form rather than vice versa. And while that is mostly hypothetical, or as the mentally impaired or as the kids say, if FC, there is some evidence to this. And no, the evidence isn't just calculated by A, the stats of the attackers around him, but for those interested, Luis Suarez had 37 goal contributions that season, while Ousmane Dembele chipped in with 22. But again, that's not everything. And B, neither is it calculated by just tallying up Barca's win-loss record in games without Messi that season. Both of those methods would simply just be using statistics without the right context. For example, if you don't elaborate on the types of games and situations the likes of Suarez and Dembele contributed, you won't fully be able to grasp the true extent and importance of their contributions. And similarly, if you just tally up Barca's results and games Messi didn't play that season, you never know, those may have just been random games in random parts of the season in random days where the team just wasn't clicking for some random reason. Again, context is key. So what you instead should do is, if you can, you should try and establish some patterns across somewhat of a sustained period of time. In this case, we should try and see if there is a time in that 18-19 season where Messi was playing for the team, was on hot form, but then stopped playing, and see how the team fared without him. That should tell you how much they actually missed him, instead of just, you know, tallying up just random games in the season that he missed while completely ignoring the time frame. And well, with guys like Messi and Ronaldo, it's hard to find data like this because, well, these gimps are never fucking injured. But luckily for us, we do have a small sample from that season we can work with. So, from the 18th of September to the 20th of October 2018, Messi played a total of 7 straight games for Barcelona in the Champions League and La Liga. And no lie, he made at least 1 goal contribution in every single one of those games, stacking up a total of 11 in that streak. And in those 7 games, Barca won 4, drawn 2, lost 1. But then, Leo unfortunately had an arm injury that ruled him out for a couple of weeks. And bro, this at the time was a huge worry for the side, and it's not just cause he's Messi, but also cause this was during the couple of weeks where Barca not only had to face Inter Milan twice, but also Real Madrid in the first Clasico of the season, and also Rayo Vallecano. So having to go through their toughest phase of the season without the talisman and, according to some of you, their one man in the one-man team, sounds like death. So how did they do? They slapped Inter 2-0 at home and broke their 7-game winning streak, and then in the return leg became the first team in 2 months to take a point from Inter at the San Siro. Inter would then go 2 more months without giving anything away at that stadium, by the way. Not to mention destroying Real Madrid 5-1 at the Camp Nou. Also, they beat Rayo 3-2, all without Messi. Messi then returned to the team, and for some reason Barca only won 1 out of the next 3 games, but then resumed duties as usual. And this is what I mean. As amazing as Leo was doing that season, it honestly was the momentum of the team driving him rather than his momentum driving the team. And by the way, even having said that, please don't think I'm making my judgments only on the few games Barca played without Messi in 18-19. The sample sizes analysed were quite small. So even outside that analysis, ask yourself this, and please be honest. How many instances can you name in the 18-19 season where Barca were completely against it, against a huge threat of a team, and then Messi turned up, pulled something out of the bag, and turned the tide in momentum? How many of those can you name? Come on, think properly. Would be much appreciated. One-man team season. Come on, who told you this? I mean, clearly you heard it from someone famous. Come on, don't be shy, tell me who told you. Was it Gary Lineker? It was Gary Lineker, wasn't it? Well, it was either a famous person telling you, or there are 2 reasons, or 2 other reasons, that I can think of that may have led you to believe that Messi in the 2018-2019 season was a one-man team. Number 1, the defining games admittedly do leave a lasting impression, and he was arguably Barca's best performer in their 2 most defining losses that season, the Copa del Rey final where he was admittedly very good, and the 4-0 drubbing at Anfield where he was okay. But again, those are isolated examples. And number 2, Messi in the 18-19 season became a lot more involved in the creative side of things following the exit of Andres Iniesta. And well, it's Messi. People get overexcited with anything he does, and the more he does, the more excited people tend to get. But as I said, people, more doesn't always mean better. Because yes, Messi did do his job really well, but the more he became involved in the creative side of things, the worse Barca became as an attacking force. Because well, I don't know if you know this, but as Messi became more involved as a creator, Barca finished each season with less amount of goals scored in a gradual decrease, with the biggest decrease coming the season Iniesta left. Don't think that's a coincidence, because it wasn't just the goals that were drying out, there was also a gradual decrease in points won, games won, and to an extent, even their UCL output. And oh god, don't be one of those air creatures trying to combat my point by saying, well, Iniesta didn't get many goals and assists when he was here. being involved in the creative side of things is much more than just tallying up goals and assists. So much more. And if you don't get that, you're probably not ready to watch 3D football. Tom and Jerry are probably more up your alley. Oh, and one more thing. Please don't think I'm brain dead enough to think that Messi getting more involved in the creative process is what solely caused the club to decline. Bro, that's also far from the case. By the late 2010s, this club was getting f***ed from more angles than Mia flipping Khalifa. I'm just trying to show you that the guy having a more creative role for Barca, while it allowed him to showcase more of his amazing attributes, wasn't always a positive factor for the team. And more specifically for this video, Messi taking on more of a creative role in zero ways equates to him being a one-man team. Because one more time, kids, you can make that case for Messi in 2012. It'd be a little far-fetched, but vaguely plausible. You can make that claim for 2020. Again, it wouldn't be the most accurate of claims, but I'd understand where you were coming from. And you can make that claim for 2021. And in that case, there would actually be a very strong argument for it. Whereas if you try to claim that Messi in 2018-2019 was a one-man team, you're either focusing too much on the statistics, are blinded by bias to the benefit of the beloved Blaugranian and his beguiling ball-by-ball brilliance, or, no offense, it's just pure delusion. And that is that, people, and as always, you keep rolling.